Glad you all could join us. My name is Katrina Johnson.
And I am Leapai.
And we're with the Washington State Coalition for Police Accountability. Washington State Coalition for Police Accountability, WCPA, is a coalition that focuses on reducing police violence and increasing accountability. Our work centers families who have lost their loved ones to police violence.
At this moment, we would like to ask everyone to please, we are going to take a moment of silence for the lives that we've lost and in honor of those lives that we lost to police violence. Thank you very much, y'all.
We are here today to roll out the Washington Coalition for Police Accountability's 2023 legislative agenda. Please reserve your questions for the end after we have laid out our priorities, and we will call upon folks accordingly. Up first, we will have Paul Benz. Well, actually, we want to turn this over to Leslie Cushman to do a land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Katrina. I'm Leslie Cushman, and it's my honor to offer the land acknowledgement this afternoon. We gather today in humility with people joining in from across the state. All of us on lands lived on since time immemorial by Native people. We are on the traditional territories of the Nisqually and Squaxin Island peoples, Muckleshoot, Puyallup, Spokane, Kalispel, Suquamish, Cowlitz, Tulalip, Quileute, Lummi, and other tribal nations. By this acknowledgement, we affirm our obligation to earn the trust of tribal nations and the trust of tribal people, to strengthen our relationships, to uphold tribal sovereignty, and enable us to work together as friends and neighbors with respect so that we may protect and serve our communities.
Thank you so much for that, Leslie. And now, as we kick off our 2023 priorities, let me introduce Mr. Paul Benz.
Thanks, Katrina. I'm going to be speaking to the independent prosecutor bill. The reason that the WCPA is bringing forth a bill to create an office of independent prosecutor is to reduce the deaths and serious bodily harm that comes far too often from law enforcement use of deadly force, and to reform the historic and systemic conflict of interest that exists between local county prosecutors and law enforcement. Secondly, this office would work hand in hand with the Office of Independent Investigations that is close to being operational, where these cases, small in number but critical in the loss of life, would be handed over to an OIP, an Office of Independent Prosecutor, for charging and prosecution consideration. These two statewide independent offices came out of the governor's task force that had prosecutors, law enforcement, community members, and impacted family members as a part of that process. Lastly, Washington State is the first state in our nation to set these offices, independent offices up, and which continues the ongoing transformation of how law enforcement does its work in this state. We are listening and in conversation with all sides, and in particular in the law enforcement associations, we appreciate the support for this bill of the Fraternal Order of Police. But most importantly, the voice of our family members who've lost loved ones will continue to drive all of our work. And now I want to turn this over to Debbie Novak to speak about this bill from Spokane.
Thank you, Paul. Hello, I'm Debbie Novak, a member of the Washington Coalition for Police Accountability and Spokane Community Against Racism. And most importantly, I'm an impacted family member speaking on behalf of families that have lost loved ones to police use of force across our state. I back, and I want you to back, this bill to create an office for an independent prosecuting attorney, a truly independent prosecuting attorney. We need prosecuting attorneys that do not work side by side on a daily basis with the same officers that they are supposed to make a determination on whether or not that officer should be tried by a jury of their peers. This is an obvious conflict of interest, and frankly, it is outrageous that this has been common practice. You see, I am the mother of David Novak that was shot and killed by a Spokane police officer in January 2019. Some of the things that I and my family endured after David's death that I believe would have happened differently had there been an independent investigation, and if the Spokane Police Department had followed Initiative 940 as it was in place at the time of David's untimely death. We were not notified of David's death. There was hiding of evidence. There was no communication between law enforcement and our family. Even though the investigation was completed in March 2019, it would be 5.5 months before any of the investigation was released to our family. When we asked the prosecuting attorney why this happened, he said he was too busy. We have been physically barred from press conferences. And most importantly, I want you to know that the lead investigator was a Spokane City detective, shot by a Spokane police officer, and the lead investigator was a Spokane City detective. This is not an independent investigation. We need a truly independent prosecuting attorney. Please continue to seek justice and accountability that will serve to save lives and to bring transparency that the people in Washington state deserve by backing this bill. Thank you. And now I'd like to introduce to you Kurtis Robinson.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Kurtis Robinson, Spokane, Washington. I identify as BIPOC, Black, Indigenous person of color, and I use he, him pronouns. I serve on the Washington Coalition for Police Accountability, as well as a social justice advocate here across the state, and more specifically in Eastern Washington. And when it comes to this bill, what we're really looking for is to have the true intent of integrity manifest itself, because true integrity seeks out accountability and invites transparency. And that's what we're looking for here. We've had an industry that over its historical content has traditionally never been held accountable, as well as an office that has continued through manifesting multiple levels of conflicts of interest to give law enforcement a pass time and time again for some very gross, obtuse and harmful behaviors across the spectrum. And that's definitely manifested itself here in Washington, and especially here in Eastern Washington, as Debbie Novak just pointed out. This bill will help navigate the inherent conflict of interest that has played out historically, and until recent times has continued to give the worst of law enforcement behavior a pass time and time again. We look for this bill to help install trust and confidence that continues to lift up and serve the best of our ideals, instead of giving a pass to the worst of law enforcement behavior that, again, fails our community over and over and over again. So we encourage you to look at this bill intensely and enthusiastically as the next step in helping serve our Eastern Washington and Washington state community, as well as our law enforcement community, because everybody knows that you cannot hold, or you cannot have any human industry or any healthy human development without accountability. And that's what we're looking for here. And with that, I will pass it on to, I have no idea.
Oh, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Kurtis. Appreciate you all for sharing. All right, everyone, this next portion, we are going to have folks, including Rep. Ty, share a little bit about the civil liability bill. Rep. Ty.
Can you hear me? Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I am coming to you and join you in solidarity from a National Asian Pacific Islanders caucus. Actually, this is the first time the Quad Asian Pacific Islanders, Black, legislators, Hispanic legislator, Native legislator as a Quad Caucus at national level meeting together, really share our legislative priorities and pulling our weight together, elevating the voice of marginalized people. I'm so happy that I could be with you, even though not as close as in Washington, but I can feel your spirit. And so thank you. First of all, thank you for pulling together a coalition. Thank you for being there, sharing your personal stories so that many can learn from, and allowed many of us to be in the space of advocacy and justice with you. Thank you for allowing me to be your partner in this work. So the legislation that we pushed forward, the last two sessions did not go as we wanted it. But we do not, it doesn't stop us, right? We continue the fight. The only thing is like we will fight smarter. So House Bill 1202, as we used to know, is now split into two. And I saw my colleague is also on the call. So I will have him talk about his legislative work. I will simply speak continuously from the legislation that I championed and with your support and your partner to ensure that people who constitutional rights being violated by law enforcement have remedies, and not just any remedies. It has to be meaningful remedies. All of our constitutional rights has to be protected, and civil liability should be available to Washingtonians, and more importantly, that police and law enforcement could not use qualified immunity as their broad immunity to protect them while they violate our constitutional right. I can speak to this for like the next 2 hours because I have so much to say. All I'm asking is for those who are with us in this press conference, and those who's going to watch this in your convenience time, join us. Your voice is important. When one of us is hurting, all of us are hurting. And this isn't about one community. This is about our community across Washington state. So join me in this effort. Join the Washington Coalition for Police Accountability in this effort, because when we all thrive, we all benefit. So thank you so much for giving me this platform and share with you this important legislation.
Thank you, Reptai. Appreciate all your work. Thank you. Next up, we have Maya Manis.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Maya Manis, the Advocacy and Community Engagement Director at the Urban League of Metropolitan Seattle. The mission and vision at the Urban League is economic parity and safety for Black people and equity for all. This includes ensuring that our community has a chance to thrive without fear of violence or death by the hands of police. But unfortunately for many, if they experience violence at the hands of the police, there's little to no course of action to ensure that there is accountability for their rights being violated. We must expect our law enforcement officers to uphold the Constitution, and if an officer violates our rights or breaks the law, we must expect consequences. No one, especially law enforcement, should be above the law. Currently, officers are shielded from accountability when they violate people's rights through the doctrine of qualified immunity. In addition, there's no way for suing law enforcement officers for damages or the cost of injury if they violate our Washington constitutional rights, which are more protective of our privacy than federal Constitution. The Access to Fairness Bill could change the current landscape by creating an avenue for victims harmed and injured by police misconduct to hold officers and departments accountable for violating their rights under the Washington Constitution without the shield of qualified immunity. This bill would allow victims to fight for their rights in court, providing them access to answers, compensation, and justice. This legal remedy is only a part of how we can hold institutions accountable and put responsibility where it belongs. We must encourage police departments to have a culture of following the law and upholding the rights of community members they serve. Thank you so much. And I will pass it to Bo.
Thank you so much, Maya. At this time, I will turn it over to Rep. Hansen to introduce our AGO patterns and practices. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Poe, and thank you to everyone. I'm sorry we're not seeing you outside. It's beautiful and snowy in Olympia today. My name is Drew Hansen, and I want to acknowledge that I am standing very much on the shoulders of Representative Tai for this Attorney General Patterns and Practices Authority bill, and on the shoulders of everyone who's on this call. Here's what the bill does. You've heard this morning about a lot of the really tragic circumstances where we are having independent investigations and, God willing, independent prosecutions. This bill is about prevention. This bill is about solving problems before someone ends up dead. The Department of Justice, as you may know, has broad authority to seek court orders to require law enforcement to comply with the Constitution and laws of the United States. As you may also know, the city of Seattle has been under a consent decree sparked by a Department of Justice investigation and ordered by Judge Robard for about a decade. This bill gives that same set of tools to the state attorney general. Now, why do we want to do that? Well, if you have a serious pattern or practice of law enforcement misconduct, you have a couple options right now. One, you can complain to the political authorities that oversee the department. Well, what if that falls on deaf ears? Another is you can try to get the Department of Justice interested. Well, what if that falls on deaf ears? They are too busy. They have other priorities. We would like to create a separate state opportunity to have the state authorities provide some oversight, if necessary, investigation, and seek a court order to address patterns and practices of misconduct precisely so that we don't end up with some of the horrifying and tragic situations that we've seen and that people have talked about on this call. So this bill is about prevention. It is about preventing serious misconduct before it occurs. And once more, just, can't thank Representative Tai enough. This bill began life as part of her bill last year. She very graciously allowed me to do this. And thank you to the coalition for very kindly asking me to prime sponsor it. Looking very much forward to bringing this bill out of my committee, the Civil Rights and Judiciary Committee, and moving it forward to the desk of my constituent, the governor. Thank you.
Thank you, Rep. Hansen. Thank you for your time today and sharing. Next up, we have Shelly Washington. Please, Shelly.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Shelly Washington. I'm a member of the WCPA, and I'm also an impacted family member. I'm a resident of Clark County. My nephew, Kevin Peterson Jr., was 21 years old when he was killed by the Clark County deputies back in October 29th, 2020. I want to share what I and others have observed from living in Southwest Washington. The Vancouver Police Department and Clark County Sheriff's Office have shown a pattern of excessive force and unnecessarily deadly force against people of color and people with behavioral health issues. This causes, in such a short time, 8 officer killings, and 5 of the 8 were Black and Pacific Islanders in the county, where those communities make up only 3% of the population. Lives are being lost over several nonviolent crimes, such as 10 Xanax pills or no trip permit. In nearly all cases, police justify the use of lethal force with the same narrative that they failed to comply. In the case of my nephew, one deputy clearly stated, I kind of just drew a line in the sand. I've given the suspect enough commands. If he takes another step, I'm going to shoot him. Last year, the NWACP and the ACLU filed a request with the U.S. Department of Justice to investigate the Vancouver Police Department and the Clark County Sheriff's Office because of this history of excessive force. To date, we have yet to hear a response. People of color are constantly overrepresented in who is being killed or who force is being used against. And this is shown in the law enforcement agency's own data. I asked, what do we do and where do we go for help? If a department has a history of violating the civil rights of community members and doesn't change or fix it itself year after year, someone has to step in and stop the harm. I am committed to the work and will make it I am committed to the work it will take to get this bill passed. And thank you, Rep. Hansen, for supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you again, Shelly. Appreciate you. And while re-traumatizing, we do appreciate you sharing that again. Next up, we have Enoka Herat.
Hello, my name is Enoka Herat, and I'm the Police Practices and Immigration Counsel at the ACLU of Washington. And we support the AG Pattern or Practice Bill because it will address widespread and systemic misconduct. This bill is about departments that routinely use excessive force, that repeatedly make stops, searches, or arrests that are unreasonable. Departments that have discriminated against community members based on race, religion, disability, sex, or immigration status. This bill is not about isolated incidents or individual acts of misconduct by an officer. This is really about where systems within a department have failed, or where there's a department that is unable to or simply unwilling to course correct to ensure that they're upholding the law and the Constitution. If this bill passes, Washington would join California, Colorado, Virginia, and New Mexico in authorizing their state attorney general's offices and providing a backstop for systemic failure. This is critical because we currently have to wait for the U.S. Department of Justice to intervene, and that can take years. In the meantime, misconduct goes unchecked, which undermines the effectiveness of law enforcement, the confidence of police and community relations, and the achievement of justice. This bill strengthens and clarifies the Attorney General's ability to investigate, look into a department's own data, training and accountability systems, et cetera, and to bring suit if necessary to make changes to address civil rights abuses and ingrained problems at the department level. This bill is really about good governance and ensures a basic level of quality constitutional policing across our state. We're grateful to the work that Representative Tai and Representative Hansen have done in sponsoring this. Thank you, and I'll turn it back over to Poe.
Thank you so much, Enoka. Now, folks, we will be diving into traffic stops, and I will be calling on Matthew Sutherland, please.
Hi, my name is Matthew Sutherland. I'm the Advocacy Director for Transportation Choices Coalition, and we're proud to partner with the Washington Coalition of Police Accountability and the ACLU on the Traffic Safety for All bill. In advance, thank you to Tonya and Sonia for sharing your stories today and highlighting how vital this work is. The bill we're proposing will end traffic stops for non-moving violations, and this bill aims to be a solution. People who cannot afford to fix a taillight are not helped by enormous fines. Rather, through grant programs, we aim to provide to local governments and institutions. We can empower communities through non-punitive programs like repair vouchers, taillight installation workshops, helmet vouchers, fee waivers for expired tabs, and more. In a system periled with safety issues, we're hoping that this bill will bring some relief. Cyclists and drivers will be safe from unnecessary conflicts with law enforcement. This bill will reduce disproportionate impacts on communities of color and low-income people by reducing unnecessary stops, voluntary searches, and irrelevant questioning. We have seen minor non-moving violations be the justification for pulling over or profiling Black and brown people. Washington has its own history with people being killed during these interactions, and there shouldn't be a single one of these instances ever again. Expired tabs don't pose a threat to life, and spending law enforcement resources enforcing them takes time and resources away from enforcement of true safety issues. We're better off focusing our resources on reckless or impaired driving or other instances that are more vital to enforce. Finally, we are looking to build a system rooted in fairness. We should prioritize equity over needless punishment that primarily affects the most disadvantaged of our communities. These thoughts primarily are of those with older vehicles and those who are poor. Stopping people for these offenses can be humiliating, frustrating, and unfair. Most importantly, it has been ineffective in solving the root cause of any of these problems. This bill is a step forward for all Washingtonians who just need to get around. A $136 fine for expired tabs is a lot for a situation where someone probably just needed a reminder, let alone the risk to safety that occurs with those stops. For many people, that $136 can make or break a family budget. Users of Washington's transportation system should feel safe using it, and this bill prevents unnecessary conflict, keeping people safe from needless harassment, excessive fines, and frees up resources to deal with imminent traffic safety issues and moves us closer to our vision of equity we have promised Washingtonians. With that, I'll pass it back over to Poe.
Thank you so much, Matthew. Without further ado, it's my honor and privilege to introduce to you all Senator Saldana.
Thank you. And I'm here in strong support of the traffic stop legislation, because especially over the last few years, when through the pandemic, many workers stayed home, but those that were compelled to get into their cars were our essential workers, healthcare workers, home care workers, nursing aides, construction workers. And many of these workers are ones that need grant programs and support, not needless delays in getting to work to support the people that need them the most. This makes a lot of sense in terms of prioritizing safety, in terms of prioritizing resources, and making sure that our professional law enforcement are focused on what really is causing harm and jeopardizing people's lives, which is reckless driving and other types of crimes. This is not, being poor and driving should not be criminalized. With that, I will bring it back to Poe.
Thank you so much, Senator Saldana, for your time and space this afternoon. Next up, we have Tonya Isabell, please.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Tonya Isabell. I'm a member of the WCPA, also an impacted family member. I am the cousin of Charleena Lyles, but I'm here today to ask for support on the traffic stop bill because I am a Black parent with Black children, and I am in fear of their life every day that they go out in their cars and they drive. And if they get pulled over, are they going to make it back home? Because if they reach in the glove department to get the insurance paper, or if they reach for their wallet, are they going to say they have a weapon and they end up dead? So to me, it's very important that we get these laws in place to protect the lives of the children that's coming up in this world behind us. So again, that's the reason I'm standing behind this bill, to protect my children. Thank you.
And thank you so much, Tonya. Appreciate you. And now we have Sonia Joseph. Thank you, Sonia.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Sonia Joseph. I'm the board president for the Washington Coalition for Police Accountability. I'm also a police commissioner for the Washington State Criminal Justice Training Center. And my story started on June 24th, 2017, and my son never came home. It was a Friday night and he was pulled over for a traffic stop. He was profiled and stopped for expired tags. That stop escalated into the use of 3 deadly force pit maneuvers. It ended in a cul-de-sac where Officer William Davis walked towards a moving vehicle, shot 2 rounds, killing my son execution style, and then claiming that he feared for his life. Why this bill is important to me is because all of that could have been prevented by mailing him a ticket, by not escalating, by not using deadly force tactics. And, all of the priorities that we just listed, we support providing assistance to people in crisis and need of help. We oppose allowing physical harm and physical force, when an officer has reasonable suspicions that a person has committed crimes. We support changing the standards that prioritize transparency and trust in the law enforcement profession. We're not reacting to the misinformation campaigns that spread fear and anxiety in our communities, but we will continue to advocate for laws that prioritize community safety, transparency, accountability, and for the preservation of all life. It is our priority to make sure that everyone makes it home safe. Thank you so much for the interview today. And I think we're going to move into questions.
Thank you so much for that, Sonia. I want to make sure that we don't forget about our rep-elect, Daria Farivar. Congratulations, and go ahead.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Wonderful. I am so proud to have been asked to speak at this press conference as your representative-elect from the 46th Legislative District, and I am here in support of Representative Tai's Access to Fairness bill. I first want to express my deep appreciation for the families who have courageously shared their stories and stayed persistent in their pursuit for justice. One of the primary responsibilities of our elected officials is to listen and act. I see you, I hear you, and I hope to take action with you. We've seen families lose loved ones at the hands of police and see little to no accountability for these actions, while their pain and suffering is repeated across the state. All professionals should be held accountable in a meaningful way, and all who are harmed should be afforded the opportunity to seek genuine justice. We have the opportunity to join the ranks of states who believe that law enforcement is no exception and should be held to these standards as well. Accountability is one of the most important and basic components of professional life, yet I don't see that meaningfully reflected across all professions. Accountability is a way to provide checks and balances and address underlying power dynamics. In a system with such significant power and authority, average citizens who are the subjects must have the opportunity to seek justice when they are wronged. We are just seeking to balance out those power dynamics. Through my time as an advocate working at Washington's designated protection and advocacy agency, I've been able to learn about the harm caused by immunity statutes of various kinds. I've learned that these statutes prevent those who are harmed from seeking accountability and justice, and that ultimately this erodes trust between underrepresented communities and the authority in question. I've also unfortunately learned that these statutes don't incentivize sound and reasonable practices and policies that uphold the law. We've seen that throughout the state and country what a lack of meaningful accountability means for our communities. We need to encourage a culture of following the law and upholding the rights of community members. We need a culture of transparency and accountability, and we need balance. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you so much. If there are no questions at this time, I want to take this time to thank everyone for joining us for our Washington State Coalition for Police Accountability's 2023 legislative agenda priorities. And we look forward to having you all join us as we continue to fight for change. Thank you all for coming.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.